I'll tell you what, it's only 10 after, but let's just start now. Maybe we'll get out a little bit early today. If you don't have to go here, but I just want to show you this is where I'm going to go. Now, if it's easier for you to go there, then do it, and if it's not, then don't. Either way, it's totally fine. But I just want to mention, because we've already started looking at these. All right, so I'm going to go through real quickly a couple of the examples that they're showing there. So notice with an insert, we did a very similar thing. The first one we did was we did that insert. Now, I just had you copy it in there directly, and it worked, right? But we could have said db dot, the name of our database, so we could have said db dot mydb or whatever it was, dot insert one, and we could have put it in like this. The reason I'm telling it to you like that is that's the way you're probably going to end up doing it if you want to throw a record in a program, as opposed to the way that we're doing it. And again, you'll notice here that, again, they don't have, even though I put the double quotes in on the keys, they're not here, and it still works just fine. Also notice it is possible that a movie can stretch different genres. It's possible that a movie can have more than one director, and typically a movie will have a cast of more than one. So all of those were set up as arrays. All right? So here they're inserting many. So you see the difference. Again, almost everything you do will be either do this one, do this many. All right? So the reason that becomes important is, are you looking for a single record? And if you are, it'll be a find one, for example. Or are you looking for any and all records that meet a certain criteria? Then it's going to be a find many. All right? So again, they go through that next with the find. And some of this we've already started looking at. Now, I want you to see this. We're going to go through these examples, so don't worry about it, but I want you to see this. If you remember, in the days of MySQL, we had an in statement where you could say in and you could give it a list. There's something similar in here. So when you look at this, in, all right? But all their stuff that you're going to end up doing starts with a $sign. All right? When you want to use an and, let me make this a little smaller so you can hopefully see all of it. All right? There's a way that you can do an and. So what is this saying? All right? It says we want all movies released in Mexico. That's the first part. So this is the first part right here. But since we put in a comma in something else, that's an and. Now, if you run this, it's not going to work because we don't have those records. But the point is, this is one way of doing an and I'm going to show you two ways of doing it in just a minute. All right. However, for some reason, they set it up like this for an and, that you can do it this way. But when you want to do it using an or, you have to use the $sign or. I'm going to show you both doing an and with and without a $sign and. But when you do an or, you've got to do it that way. The other thing that I've noticed too, and there's probably a way around this, but we'll find out, and that is this stuff is case sensitive. It was not case sensitive when we worked in MySQL. If you were looking for last name of Scott, you put in all lowercase letters, it would find it. You do it in here, since mine was put in with an uppercase S, it won't find it. All right? And they've got the other ones that are in here as well. So you can, again, walk through there. So there's the inserts and the reads. All right. But there's stuff in here for each one of these. We're going to go through most of these. But the reason I'm showing you these is when we get done, if there's something that, what did you do again? Or that didn't make sense or whatever, this is where you can go to start getting some more information. All right. So now, and again, I've said this to you before. I'm saying it again. I used all of us in here, and we're going to run some stuff that's not going to work. All right, and I mentioned this before, that, and you don't have to type this in, but if I type in dbusers.find and I hit enter, it shows me everybody. You've already seen that. And, all right, and I'm first. Well, what if I only wanted the students in here and I know I didn't want me? I could then say db.users.find, all right, dot skip, and then say how many, try that again. db.users.find. There we go. .skip 1. And what you'll notice if you look through this, there it was, and I'm not showing anymore. All right? So it's a way to skip. You don't have to make 1 in there. You can skip as many or as few records as you want. All right. Now, just to show you again, we're going to do the equivalent of a where clause now. You know, when you do a where clause, you're filtering for criteria. So you can put this into, if you want, db.users.find, and we're going to look in here for a last name, and that last name should have a value of, this is not going to find anything. Hopefully, Aaron, I spelled your name right. All right. This won't find anything. You already know why it won't find anything. All right? And it won't because there's no McCardle in there with a lowercase m. But if you run the same command, and you put in there an uppercase M, then it finds it. All right? So this is your where type of criteria. All right? All right. Well, that's all fine. What if we only want to show the first name and last name if somebody meets that criteria? You with me? Because right now it's showing everything. That's not terrible. We don't have that many fields. But what if we had a boatload of fields in here? So I'm going to clear this and run it again. So I'm going to say a db.users.find. And again, like we did before, just like we did, we're going to put in here last name. And again, I'm going to put in McCardle. I'm not going to run it now, though. Now, I'm done with the first part of this. All right? I'm not finished, but I'm done with the first part of this. All right? So I'm going to put a comma in here. And remember, all I want to show is the first name and the last name. That's it. Now, I can keep typing, but mine might go off the screen. So I'm just going to hit enter here. Shows you the 3 dots, and that's okay. So I'm going to say in here, first name, 1, comma, last name, 1, like that. All right? And then I needed my closing parenthesis. So again, you would typically put this in on one line, but especially since I made the writing on the screen bigger, that's why I did it like this. Now, you may or may not be surprised, but when I hit enter, I get 3 things. And you're like, hey, you just told us that I don't want the darn ID. Well, normally you are going to want the ID because that's what you're going to, again, be querying on. But let's suppose you're just like, I don't want the ID. Well, I'm going to type in the exact same command. So everything, but don't hit enter when you get done. First of all, does it make sense to you that the name of the field is this? It's actually _ ID. All right. So what comes after the colon is the value. And for lack of better words, this is being cast as an object ID type. All right. That's why it gets put in like that. I mean, it's something that happens internally in the system. And I'm not sure exactly what it is or why it is. But I'm going to add to this _ ID. And for that, I want it to have a value of 0. So see the difference? 1 is presence, 0 is absence. So when I hit enter, didn't like something, so let me double check. First name. Well, I'm going to type it in again, but I don't know what I did wrong. So let me clear it, and I'll type it in again. db.users.find, and we'll just keep going. Should be right. What does it like? Good news is it's, I didn't close off that curly brace right there. You see that? Now, unfortunately, and maybe there's a way to do this. Oh, that's funny, because when I did it yesterday, my DOS key didn't work, and it's working now. That's great. If I'd have known that, I'd been using DOS key more than I have been. All right, so there's the whole thing. Enter. All right, and there's just the first and the last name. All right. Sometimes when you print this stuff out, now what I'm about to show you, I don't think it's going to change at all, but sometimes when you print this out, it's going to just, rather than being the way that we set it up on multiple lines, everything will be just squished together on one line. All right, just so you know that, depending on how you input the data. So why am I telling you this? Well, look, this is the other file that I sent to you. That's what it looks like. See that? So for every city, there's an ID, and they've actually put these in there. A city name, a location, where, its coordinates, a population, the state that it's in, etc. And actually, I think Wentzville is in here. All right? But the point is, you probably don't want to see it like that. So if that comes out and it looks like that, there's actually something that you can put on the end. I don't think this is going to change this, but you can put on the end .pretty. Somebody came up with that, and hit enter. Now notice in this case, since it's pretty small, it's still only on one line. But the point is, when you get a really ugly type of output, you typically want to put a .pretty on it. Okay, just so you're aware of that.
Scott, I have a question. When we're doing the find first name one, last name one,
Yes.
why are we putting a one behind the first name and the last name?
Because once you put the 0 in there, it says leave it off, but we're saying we want to include this and we want to include this.
Okay.
So,
So it doesn't have anything to do with ascending order? Or
no, it has
space?
nothing to do with ascending or descending. No, it's a good question. No, it just means we want those fields to be present.
Okay.
All right? And by default, if you just put those in, every other one gets a 0, meaning they're all absent.
Okay.
Except for, by default, the
Yeah.
ID shows.
Okay.
That's why we took the ID itself and put it in there like that. All right? All right. Now, a couple things, we're going to put in a couple commands that we're going to get the same results from both, but I just want to show you, as I mentioned to you before, there's multiple ways of doing the same thing. So, we've hit on Aaron enough, so let's hit on Christopher for a while. So db.users.find, and now we're going to come in, and instead of on last name, we'll just use first name. And we'll put in here Christopher. I'm not going to hit enter. I could stop it now and run it, and it would just give us the information for Christopher. All right? In fact, I guess we can do that. So if we do that, okay, I didn't do this, but let's just, if you remember, we used to have two Gabriels. All right, if we still did, and I'd have done that with Gabriel, it would have shown me both. Because the .users.find is like a find many type of thing. It'll find everything that meets that criteria. Does that make sense? Now, there's another way that you can write this, just so you're aware of it, okay? And that is, instead of doing it like this, and you might think that the way I'm about to show you is harder because it's actually a little more typing, but when we come in here and we do all this stuff, and we say Christopher like we did, all right, so we can come in here and say first name, all right, then after this we can put in another set of curly braces right there and say $EQ, all right, and that means equal to. Now when we do this, we will need another curly, all right? But when you are writing, think about this. There's EQ, and if there's an EQ, you'd think, well, is there an NEQ for not equal to? Yes, but it's not an NEQ, it's an NE. All right? So sometimes it's intuitive, and sometimes it's not really intuitive. There's an in that we're going to look at in a minute, and then there's a nin, which is not in. All right? So when we put this in and hit enter, we get the same information. This is the exact same stuff. But the point is you can do it either way. All right? And the reason that that becomes important is if you're going to be doing a lot of different things and you're putting in multiple criteria, you might have a lot of equals, not equals, in, not ins, etc. All right? But it was just to show you that that's just two ways of doing the same thing. And I'm not going to say that one is better than the other. All right? I guess if you did, you might say, well, maybe just because, it was a little bit less typing that one was better. All right? All right. Now, again, we just looked at this. So I'm going to come in here and say, I'm going to change this EQ to an NE, which says, show me all the records that do not have a first name of Christopher. All right? And hit enter, and you'll notice we've got someone, we've got Angie, we've got Aaron, we've got Gabriel, we've got Jeff, but missing from here is Christopher. All right? So all I'm trying to do here is to run through a lot of the basic commands with you. All right? And just so you get an idea of how to start playing with this stuff. All right? Now, I mentioned this to you before, but I'm going to show it to you again. Let's put in db.users.find, and we're going to say, well, what are we looking for? Well, we're looking for a city. All right? And that city has got to be one of two things. So I'm going to say $in, all right? And since there's two of them that I'm going to use in here, I'm going to use an array. And I'm going to say they can be either, got to be Troy or St. Charles. Spelling is leaving something to be desired. And when you look, we've got what? One curly, two curlies. So we've got to end this with two curlies and that. All right? And if you look, well, what doesn't it like? Oh, I know. That $in needs a colon after it. That's on me, sorry. But notice, again, and I didn't do it on purpose, but it does show right where the error is. It says, hey, you're trying to instantiate an array right there, and it makes no sense after $in to instantiate an array. But putting the colon in there, now I get Aaron, who's Troy, and Angie, who's St. Charles. But the other records have all been, they're not. And we're going to get those in just a second. All right? So I'm going to clear this again. And now, instead of running that command, I'm just going to change in to nin. And n, not in. All right? And running it again, now we should see the other four records. So we should see me, and I just put myself in with the address here in Wentzville, Gabriel, Christopher. All right, I guess that was it, because there were three more records. So that's what we should see here. So, and the someone, you're right, was Wentzville. Chesterfield, O'Fallon, and Wentzville. So in other words, everybody who's not in there. All right? Now, you may or may not have noticed what I'm about to show you, or thought about it, or not thought about it. But if I come in and type in this, db.find, .users.find, I'm sorry, .users.find, we did something like this before, all right? And what we want to do is we want to come in here and we want to say last name, okay? We already did this one, all right? It says last name is not defined. Okay, so what doesn't it like? Well, what we want is everybody who's got a last name. Do you remember that one record we put in didn't have a last name? All right. So what we can do is we can check for the existence or non-existence of something. So all I have to do here is to come back here and say, hey, for the last name field that we have right here, all right, I want to come in and I want to say, does that last name field All right, does it exist? All right, so I can come through here and say last name like this, and then come in here and say $ exists, true. All right, and it should need another curly here to end the other one.
For exists instead of exist.
Thank you. Well, it would have just given me a nice nothing back, but. So when I hit enter, notice who's not in here. It gives them to me in order. So me, Gabriel, Christopher, Aaron, Angie, but what's missing is the one record for which we did not put in a last name. So if you want to check for the existence or non-existence of something, now, you've got exists, there's no n exists. Did you hear me? There's no n exists. But if we come through here, you may have figured it out already, but what if I come through here and say this? All right, last name exists false. Well, you can see who it gives me. All right? And again, there's a lot of, I had some other examples. We can check other things. Who has hobbies, who doesn't have hobbies, etc. It's no big thing. I think you all get it. All right. There are some mathematical operations that you can do here. So if I do db.users.find, all right, and I come through, first of all, when I do this, hopefully you can tell that that's a method that it's calling, because it's got the parentheses, right? But if I leave this off and I start putting in information, for instance, if I come through here and say salary, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to say $GT for greater than $75,000. All right, I'm just making that up. There's nothing to that. And then this, does everybody realize what's going with what here? All right, in fact, that's not going to work because I'll need two of those. All right. Probably the biggest mistake, at least that I make when I'm running queries in the shell like this, is a mismatch of my curly braces. All right, so if I hit enter, well, Angie's making 85 and I'm making 100. That means that everybody else who's in here, well, let's just take a quick look. If I go back up enough, all right, so Gabriel, nope, etc. And I start looking through here, that's what you're going to find. Christopher, nope. Okay, so again, that's the GT is the great. Excuse me. That's the greater than. So you probably have already guessed. There's an LT, which is a less than. So, all right, Gabriel is at 55. Christopher is at 58. All right. And there's nobody, well, where's Aaron? I think Aaron was at 75. So we, when we did this and we ran this, all right, we could have said, oops, not there. In fact, let me clear the screen and run it again. All right. So we could have come in here and said less than or equal to. And now there's Aaron at 75,000. So there's a GT for greater than, all right, there's a GTE for greater than or equal to, an LT for less than, and LTE for less than or equal to, all right. There's a .EQ, we've already looked at that one. For equal to, there's a .NE for not equal to, all right. So you can use, and again, I've got a bunch of different examples in here, but as I'm going through it now, I think it makes a little more sense the way that we're looking at it right here. So, all right. Already showed you this one, but I'm going to show it to you again. In fact, let me back up. Looks like I didn't write the example down, so I'll have to do it off the top of my head, but hopefully that'll still be okay. We'll find out. All right. So let's go in here. I'm going to clear my screen again, and we're going to type in this. db.users.find, and we're going to put in that what we want here is a salary that is, you just saw this, greater than $75,000, all right? But then after that, we're going to put in a comma, and we're going to put in city, and we'll put in here Wentzville.
But you forgot to put curly braces for the...
We'll get it. We'll get it. Okay. I forgot what?
The curly braces for...
Before the dollar sign.
Yep, for the dollar sign.
Right here?
Yeah.
No, it's right the way it is. I think. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So.
Okay, okay. Well, let's see. Like I said, this is the one I didn't write it down, so I'm doing it off the top of my head.
We've been doing
Yep,
that.
you're right, it doesn't like that.
Yeah. 2 on one side, 1 on the other.
This is one condition, right here, and this is one condition. Okay? So, still doesn't like it. Didn't think you would want that, but it must in here, so. I don't know, I probably have too many of these. Hey, what do you know? All right. So right now, it's kind of weird. It's just showing me that. All right. Well, I'm going to rewrite this, and I'm going to use the and then we're going to rewrite it, and we're going to use an or. All right. Because I think that'll really help you see the difference between these. You know the difference between an and an or. We all do. All right. So db.users.find. We start with a $sign and we put in here our conditions. All right? And that is salary, that's $GT, that's greater than $75,000. And we want a city, that's Wentzville. In fact, I think it'll want that curly there too. So Wentzville, all right. Then we have to end this, and we have to end the entire thing here, and we have to end that, we have to end that. Let's see if I wrote it right or not. But the point is this, even if for some reason I mistyped, what this is saying is, show me everyone who their city is Wentzville and they're making greater than $75,000
Where
a
did you
year.
learn that? I found a mistype. For the greater than, you had 2 girly braces after it. You only need 1.
Okay. And the other thing is we're going to change that to greater than or equal to. Because right now I'm the only one, well, Angie too. But in this way, all right, we should only get me if it's typed in correctly. All right. Still doesn't like it. So. I'm looking here because every single thing I typed in yesterday, I spent a lot of time doing this, believe me. And, oh, try that again. See where the salary is? That does need a curly brace there. That's why there were two of them. Like that. Now, might give me a different error. Nope. So that's me. I'm the only one who meets that criteria. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to go back, leave that right there, I'll move that near the top, but I'm going to go back, I'm going to write the same query, but instead of and, I'm just going to change the word and to the word or, and hit enter. And now you'll notice that once we did the or, there's me, and there's Aaron who makes 75, and there's Angie who makes 85. All right? And it's also finding the person without a salary. Why? Because we said Wentzville was where they lived. All right? Now, you can do this. There's two different ways of writing ands, and I balled up the first way. For some reason, I didn't write it down. I'm going to recommend that since you're learning it, these two ways are identical, except one uses $ and one uses $ or. That's what I'd use. All right. What if what we just did here with this or, okay? What if we want to find out how many records there are? We don't care who they are, but all that we care about is how many there are. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to come in and type in this. db.users.count documents. And what do I want to count? Well, I want the salary. All right. And I want the salary that is, I don't know, how about less than or equal to 75,000? No. And notice it comes back with 3. And who are those 3? It's you 3, right? I said less than or equal to. If we change that again to less than, got rid of the E, it should come back with 2 because Aaron was right on the border.
Also, I found another way to do that. Just like putting a dot count parentheses.
Yeah, there's always a lot of different ways of doing it. All right? The ones that I'm showing you are the ones because I've been, literally just investigating the stuff that you're probably going to see the most often. All right? All right. Okay. There's a $not that you can use, so if you want to invert something, you can use the $not before. I'm not even going to run through that one. All right. So let's come through here, and let's assume for a second that Gabriel just got a raise. All right. So what we want to do is we want to reset his salary, and we want to set it to $66,000. He was making, I think it was 58. We want to set it to 66. Now, when we do an update, if we do an update many, it's going to reassign everybody's salary to that. So it would take people who are making more than 66 and probably upset them. All right? There was a very interesting story on the news last week. You probably didn't see it, but it was on the CBS News at 5:30. And there's a guy with a company in Seattle. He brought everybody in 5 years ago. They filmed it. He's not the kind of guy, he doesn't look like the kind of guy I would think was going to run a company. He's got a beard, and he's got hair down to his shoulders. Not that there's nothing wrong with it. I could care less. But he just didn't look like a CEO of a company. He brought everybody in. He said, I got an announcement to make. Regardless of how much money you are making, starting today, the minimum salary at this place is $70,000. And people were cheering and stuff. Some people literally got their salary doubled when he said that. And he did it because he didn't want people to leave. And since he had done that, they were talking about the number of births that they'd had, because people who couldn't afford a kid, that were having a kid now, people who had bought houses that were living in apartments, etc. So there's a lot of different things. In that case, maybe we wanted everybody to be making $70,000. Then we do an update many. We don't want to. We just want to update one. Now, I'm going to show you 2 different ways of doing this. All right, they're basically the same thing, but I want to just show you the difference. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to type in db.users.update1. All right, and this is what I'm showing you first is kind of update 1. What I'm going to show you first is, for lack of better words, we'll say the bad way of doing it. And I'll explain why in a minute, but you'll probably see it right away and get it. So first name, Gabriel. All right, comma. And then I want to say here, when you want to update something, you use a $set. So I'm saying to set the salary, set what? The salary to $66,000. All right. And we will put in those two and then this one and hit enter. Now notice we don't get a lot of information back. The key thing is the match count and the modified count. All right. It matched one record and it modified one record. All right. Remember that Gabriel is the second one, so I'm going to do a users.find, and I'm going to say in here dot limit 2, because I know he's the second record. And you'll notice his salary is now $66,000. Now, can somebody tell me why that was the poor way of doing that? What if I have 100 Gabriels who work for my company? All right, I wouldn't want to do it that way. So instead, I'd want to find out, so I'm going to grab this whole thing. In fact, I'm going to grab everything from object ID over. You can grab this, highlight it, and do a Control-C to copy. Don't right mouse click on it to choose copy, because then it's not selected anymore. So you can do a Control-C like that. Even though it looks like it worked. All right, so I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to come back again. And now with this update 1, I'm going to change this. Whoops. Let me just hit enter. I'm going to get an error here. Okay. All right. So there. So I want to do this, but now I'm going to change this, and I want my criteria in here to change. Oops. And let me get rid of that. Delete. Curly. And now I did copy it, but since I screwed that up, let me grab this again.
You should be able to use the right click.
I did that. All right. So come through here and do the same thing. All right. But the difference is now we're doing it based off of an ID. All right. And again, of course, you would. The reason I haven't shown a lot with IDs is it's probably not going to work for you because you probably have a different ID than I do. All right. But both those ways would indeed work. All right. Now, if you remember, when we you don't have to type this in, that the last person that we had in here, that's interesting. I guess I put in another record. Let's assume for a second here that for whatever reason that person has moved. All right, that's someone who's in here. They've moved. All right, so we don't know what their new address is yet. We don't care, etc. That's totally fine. But I'm going to go back and do another db.users.update1. All right. And I'm going to put in here the ID, which _ID, which is the field, colon, and I'm going to paste that in. All right. So there's their ID. All right, and I think it needs object in front of it. I think it does need object ID. Because again, it has to cast it, so object ID, and I didn't copy that, unfortunately. Let me move that up so you can see. As soon as I start typing, since I didn't do a CLS, it's going to move it down again anyway, but at least you can see that stuff. All right? So that's the ID. Oops. But instead of doing a set, I want to do an unset. Hopefully I didn't screw that up, but let's just look at it anyway, just in case I get an error or you get an error when you run this. What are we saying here? Again, your object ID will be different than mine, all right? But we're saying find this object ID and unset the address, set it equal to nothing. Does that make sense? So again, sorry if it isn't wrong syntactically. Yeah, it is. So it's telling me expected token. So it doesn't I don't know if I'm missing a curly. I've got one too many. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like I'm missing. It should have had 4 of them in here. See that? So right here, it's looking for an additional curly brace. It still says it doesn't like something. The bottom line is you want to set something, you use set. You want to get rid of something, you use unset. All right. What if I want to add something new? So in other words, what if I decide I want to add an age? Are you with me? I want to add an age. All right. And let's just say I want to add it to my record. Well, I'm going to just use Jeff because, again, I'm not going to use the object ID, even though I should. Just the reason I'm not going to use it is because your object ID is going to be different than mine. All right, so I'll just use Jeff. All right, so I'm going to come in here and say db.users.update1, and I'm going to say next, first name Jeff. Okay, you already know that, what that is, etc. Nothing new there. All right, and my curly. Oh, let me see a curly there. And since I want to add that, all right, anybody remember how you add something using an array in JavaScript? Anybody remember what the name of the method is?
Push.
Very good. 2 days now you get a gold star. For the other day and for today. All right. So you come in here and say $push. And what do I want to push? Well, I want to say age. Yeah, 25. That would be nice. All right. Now let's see. I need another one of these and that one. If I did that right, so let's check. Curly dum-dum. 1, 2, 1, 2. Again, you want to look at the match count. You want to look at the modified count. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So if I come back in here now and do my db.users.find, and I'm just going to do a limit of 1, because that's all I care about is my record there, and hit enter, you notice it now has an age. All right. And it puts it in not knowing whether or not it could have more than one possible value. The point is this. Tell me how easy that would have been if I only wanted to add it to one record in a MySQL database. It wouldn't have been. You would have had to, if you wanted, you would have had to add it to every record and made it null in every one but one, which is a waste of space and just a waste period to do that. It's not that it's wrong to do that, all right? All right. Now, we did this before, and we did, when I did the db.users.find, you noticed, or hopefully you did, that Gabriel has hobbies and Christopher has hobbies, and none of the rest of us do. All right? So, let's come in here and do this. And you tell me what you think this is going to do. I'm going to type in db.users.update many. And I'm going to say for hobbies, and again, whoops, no, I got all those curly braces in there, but I did. Hobbies. That's what I wanted. All right. Just looking at that, and again, it's possible I mistyped. What do you think that's going to do?
So you said that people that have hobbies do not have.
Yeah. We're getting rid of hobbies for anybody who might have them. All right? So it's an update many. So now notice the match count changed to 2 and the modified count changed to 2. All right? So again, if I come through here, and I'm going to clear the screen, and I do a db.users.find again, and I run it, you'll notice that both Gabriel and Christopher no longer have hobbies. So that's a fast way that you can update to get rid of something, is using the unset. All right? Now, I want to mention something. I didn't put this one in there because I guess I just missed it. But there's an insert if you want to add things. There's also, and it sounds a little weird, but there's something called an upsert. All right? What an upsert will do is, it's if you're attempting to do an update, but if something doesn't meet your criteria, it puts it in as an insert. So it's kind of a combination of an update and an insert. All right? And I'm not saying that's a good thing or that's a bad thing. Again, it's a thing. All right, one more here is db.users.replace 1. Okay, just 1. And again, I look, just so you hear this, I would typically go in and do this probably with an ID, just to make sure there weren't a lot of people that were about to meet this criteria. But I'm going to come in here and do this. I'm going to say first name, Jeff. And then I'm going to say first name, Jeffrey. And very simply, that says everybody who's in the database now with the name of Jeff, find the first one and change them from Jeff to Jeffrey. I'm the only Jeff in there, but again, if I do the db.users.find.limit of 1, because I know I'm first, you'll notice that I'm in there as Jeffrey now. All right? Questions on any of that stuff? All right. Now, I don't know where people are. What I decided to do, I just want to show you this. I'm trying to figure out if I can show you. Yes, I can. I'm giving you a quick little window into my world of Rankin here. All right, so I go in there and I log in, and I'm going to academics, and I'm going to this class, and I'm going to coursework. I don't want to show anybody's grades. I would never want to do that. But this is how I have to lay things out. Okay? So, everybody has done the JavaScript review, Everybody has done the homework, etc., the lab, all right? And basically the review was the test. Well, it wasn't the test. We did a few things, all right? But you all got pretty much full credit for this. We did the Bootstrap website, all right? Unit 1 really didn't have a mastery test here, if you look at this. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that node stock app, node app stock, whatever the heck we called it, and I'm making that your test for the first unit. And it's going to be worth 100 points. Now, some of you, you know who you are, have already turned this in. But I want you to know that the way I'm going to grade this, at least in part, is going to be not just on the quantity and how does it work, but on the quality. Does it look nice? Is it starting to look professional? All right? And why am I even telling you this? Well, the Bootstrap website that you turned in, you know, I'd say that out of the 4 of you, probably 2 or 3 were really professional. Actually, they all were in some ways, and in some ways they were not. All right? And, I mean, I think you know him from last semester. James, who sits in the back of the room, all right, he hasn't missed a point this whole semester. They had that same assignment that you guys did. And he went over and above and did a lot of stuff he didn't have to do. All right? The reason I'm telling you that is I want to make sure when you turn it in, you know, if you lose points, then you know that you're losing points because, you know, I have ascertained that there's something with the quality that wasn't that good or it didn't work. Does that make sense to everybody? All right? Because I should have done a better job since it's a test. What I really should do, and maybe I'll try to do it right now or in a couple minutes, is to come up with a sheet that explains the criteria for those 100 points, because that's what we're supposed to be doing all the time. All right, our next unit then, our last unit was this MySQL. And notice it says MySQL REST API. Well, right now, it's worth, see, none of you are graded. All right, so let's say that it's worth, what, it's 100 points. So let's just say, I'm going to change it right about. So Gabriel got it perfect. I do that, boom, he gets 100 points. All right, and Christopher didn't do it, so he gets 0 points, etc. And that immediately goes and it upgrades everything in your on your inside ranking. Okay, that isn't that important. But again, what's important, the reason that I'm showing you that is I want to make sure that I go back and looking at this, that I don't know, I think the only thing that we did that we turned in for, or that you're turning in now, is to finish up the REST API that we were working on. All right, so I'm probably going to end up moving that from here to here. And then I'm going to change that. And in here, I mean, we did a bunch of exercises as a class, kind of writing some queries and some stuff. I'll probably just give everybody that. Now, what we're going to start doing on Monday of next week is we're going to start coming in and looking at, now we've been looking at Mongo and Mongoose. So you're going to have in here both a lab and you're going to have homework for that. All right? And for both of those, you'll get some kind of a write-up. All right? What you have to do. And then we'll have a test on it. But I kind of have decided to combine the tests for databases into one database test. See what I'm saying? With what we did with the MySQL, I didn't know if it was worth testing you on. It's easier to confuse you with that than anything else. And then the next thing that we go into will be React. All right? And we're going to learn how to build another way of building front ends with React. And we're going to, again, have a lab, and we'll have a homework, and there'll be a test on that. All right? Then as we go in and we're working on this, we are going to be working on this final project. My goal is by no more than 3 or 4 weeks from now, I want to actually start on that. All right? And I think I've already mentioned this to you. We'll build like an e-commerce site together. All right? And you getting yours to work will be this part of it. You taking that and changing it so that, let's say I'm selling hats. And Gabriel's like, well, that's stupid. I want to sell basketballs, let's just say. So he's going to change it to that. Just like we've been doing, change the color, change the fonts, maybe do some stuff that I didn't do. See what I'm saying? And that'll end up being for your I put presentation here. I'd actually like to have everybody just show theirs, all right, at the end of the semester. I mean, we're all friends here, and just so you know, all right, you guys didn't really have to do it last semester, but there'll be you guys and there'll be the other two, so there should be Nicholas and James in spring. And what we'll do is on the last day of class is, because you're going to be doing another thing where you're going to be creating your own app, your own Android app, you'll show them to everybody. Usually I bring Mr. Corrigan in here, and in the past I brought in Brandon and I brought in Patrick, because then when people come in and ask them what kind of things do the students do, that's the kind of stuff you can show them. All right? So, like I said, if you want to start looking at this, playing with this at all right, you can come in here, and the other file that I gave you, this one, you can go in and create yourself, all right, you can create yourself a new collection and then just drop this in. Now, again, we've manually put those in here, and I don't remember even, there's several thousand lines in here. Notice, many, many lines, right? All right. So if you go into a Control-C, Control-A, Control-C, and copy it in, it'll work, but it's going to take a little bit of time to work, and it'll have these IDs in it. All right? But again, if you want to print that out and make it look like print out a record, let's just say, and you want it to look better, more like the way ours have looked, you can do the .pretty that's on the end. But I figured, I literally went in and I Googled, basically existing data sets in Mongo, and this was one of the ones that I found. There's other ones as well. All right? And the last thing I was going to tell you about this is just so you know, because I've been watching some of these. Where is it? Of course, I closed that before, so let's see. YouTube. No, you got to spell it right, Jeff. There actually is out here I wish I wouldn't have closed that before, but I did. Let's do this.
We've got MongoDB.
Yeah, but I think it is just Mongo. I don't think it is MongoDB. It could be. I know exactly the one I'm looking for because I had it up before. All right, well, yeah, maybe it is MongoDB then. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go over here to playlists, and these are from the people from Mongo themselves. All right, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff out here. In fact, I know I can find it because I saved it. All right, so this was one of the ones I was watching. I don't know which one it is. No, this is the second one. This is the data modeling. The guy, he's a little, I'm going to say goofy, but he's not goofy, but it's not the right word. No, it's not. Of course, it's not finding it. But there's two of them. There's another one that's here. There. That's the intro. It's about 25 minutes long. And he explains some stuff. You know, it's
here, and that's what we're going to use. But if we click this down, there's a lot of other drivers that we can use.
not getting sound right now because it's going through
Go,
Camtasia.
Java, C,
All right.
Cs.
But there are a lot of videos out there is what I'm telling you. All right. We're going to take it slow next week. We're going to build a project that's going to be fairly simplistic. All right. Then we're going to go and we're going to build our first one that's going to be better. All right. Probably it'll be like a blog. That's what I've been working on. All right. And Mongo will be the database, so that we'll be able to save users, we'll be able to save blogs, we'll give it an interface because we haven't been really working with interfaces now with the database stuff, so we'll do that. And I actually hope that to get into that either no later than a week from Monday, and ideally by the end of next week. All right? Questions? So you've got about an hour and a half if you want to sit and work on your Node stock app or start going into your next thing that's due, the REST API one. Okay? Yes.
So the stock node app is due Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, I'll write something up now just so you know exactly how I'm going to break down the scoring. All right. Any other questions? All right.